Lyra's life had always been a struggle. She was born on the planet Xenos, a world far away from Earth, filled with advanced technology and powerful beings. Yet despite being the daughter of the royal family, Lyra had never experienced the luxuries one would expect from a princess. Her father, the Emperor of Xenos, ruled with an iron fist, and Lyra's life was controlled by strict rules and expectations. But there was one thing her father could never give her: freedom. Freedom to live the life she wanted. Freedom to make her own choices. Instead, she was hidden away in a small, secluded area of the palace, away from the rest of the royal family. She was raised in isolation, with only a few servants for company and no real friends. Her world was one of cold walls, cold expectations, and a constant feeling of being trapped. On the outside, Xenos may have looked like a beautiful planet, full of shining cities and powerful technology. But inside, Lyra felt alone and unnoticed. She was the alien princess, but she never felt special. She was an outcast in her own kingdom. The other members of the royal family often ignored her, and even her own father barely acknowledged her existence. As time passed, Lyra's frustration grew. She didn't want to be just a forgotten princess. She didn't want to live a life locked away in a tower. She longed for something more, something real. She often watched Earth through a special window in her chamber, fascinated by the human world. The people there seemed so free, so full of life, and yet they struggled in ways she could never imagine. It was a world filled with both hope and chaos, but it seemed much more alive than the cold, controlled world of Xenos. Lyra found herself drawn to a specific event she saw on Earth: the Miss Universe competition. The beauty, the confidence, and the recognition. She had never seen anything like it before. On Xenos, beauty was seen differently, and people were judged by power, strength, and intelligence. But the humans, the way they celebrated each other's uniqueness, was something Lyra could only dream of. Every year, she would watch the competition in secret, imagining herself in the spotlight, walking the stage with the world watching her, feeling the love and admiration that came with it. It was a life she had always wanted, but could never have. She wasn't human, and her people wouldn't allow her to leave Xenos. It felt like an impossible dream. One day, as she sat by the window, her heart heavy with longing, a strange thought crossed her mind. What if she could go to Earth? What if she could be part of that world, just for a moment? What if she could be part of the Miss Universe competition? Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a messenger, carrying a strange message. It was an invitation, but not just any invitation. It was an invitation to participate in the Miss Universe competition on Earth. Lyra couldn't believe it. Was this real? Could it be possible? She held the letter in her hands, staring at the words in disbelief. This was her chance, her only chance, to escape the life she had known and step into a world that seemed like a dream. But could she really do it? Could a poor alien girl, a princess trapped in her own world, really become something more? As Lyra stood there, holding the letter, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. She knew this might be her only chance to leave behind a life that had never truly been hers. But at the same time, she was terrified. What would people think? Would they accept her? Would she even fit in? In the end, she made a decision. She would go. She had nothing to lose. This was her moment to finally escape the shadows of her past and step into the light of her future. Little did she know, her journey was about to change everything, not just for her, but for the entire planet Earth. Lyra's journey to Earth felt like a dream, yet as the spacecraft hurtled through the vast expanse of space, she could hardly believe it was actually happening. The cold, sterile walls of the Xenosian ship were a far cry from the bright, bustling energy she had seen on Earth. For the first time, she felt both hopeful and nervous. The stars outside seemed to beckon her to a world full of possibilities, yet she still couldn't shake the fear of being rejected. When she finally landed, the contrast between her old life and Earth was overwhelming. The air felt different, warmer, and more alive. The bright lights of the city she arrived in were nothing like the dimly lit corridors of her palace. The humans, unlike her Xenosian people, were full of energy, chatting, laughing, and living in a way that was so different from the cold, emotionless world she had grown up in. Lyra stood on the Earth's soil for the first time, feeling the ground beneath her feet. It was exhilarating, but she also felt out of place. She didn't belong here, not yet. Her appearance alone made her stand out. Her skin shimmered with a faint silvery glow. Her eyes were a brilliant shade of violet, and her height and build were more delicate than the average human. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like an alien in a world that didn't know her, nor was she sure she could trust. But there was something else she couldn't ignore, a quiet sense of wonder. The humans were kind, too kind, in ways that she couldn't fathom. There was a purity in their hearts that her people had lost long ago. In the days leading up to the Miss Universe competition, Lyra trained rigorously. Her beauty, though different from human standards, had been carefully cultivated back home. But she knew that it wasn't enough just to look good. She had to learn everything about human culture, how they moved, how they spoke, how they interacted. She had no idea where to begin. It was during one of these sessions, struggling with a simple human gesture, how to smile naturally, that she met him. Ethan. Ethan was a volunteer at the Miss Universe event, working tirelessly to ensure everything went smoothly. He was kind, patient, and most importantly, he was the first human who didn't treat her like an alien. Lyra had been surrounded by humans during her training, but they always looked at her with curiosity or pity. They didn't truly see her as one of them. But Ethan, he looked at her with something different, understanding. One evening, when Lyra was alone practicing her walk, he noticed her struggling and walked up to her. "You're doing fine," he said, offering a gentle smile. "But maybe try thinking of it as a dance. Just let your body move freely." Lyra was taken aback. The kindness in his voice was like nothing she had ever experienced. She had always been taught to be perfect, to hide any weakness, but here was a human who wanted to help, simply because he wanted to. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaky. Ethan smiled, sensing her discomfort. "No problem. You're not alone here. If you ever need help, just ask." Lyra was stunned. She hadn't expected this kind of kindness, not from anyone, let alone a stranger. But there was something in Ethan's eyes that made her believe him, something that made her feel, for the first time in her life, like she wasn't an outsider. Over the next few weeks, Ethan continued to help Lyra, teaching her how to interact with humans, showing her the small things, how to speak with confidence, how to carry herself, how to laugh in a way that felt natural. But it wasn't just his advice that helped her. It was his unwavering belief in her. Lyra couldn't understand it at first. Why was he helping her? Why was he so kind? One evening, after a particularly grueling practice, Lyra sat alone in a quiet corner of the event hall, trying to collect her thoughts. Ethan approached, holding a cup of water. "You okay?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Lyra nodded slowly. "I'm just tired. It's so different here. I don't know if I belong. I'm an alien, a poor alien." Ethan looked at her thoughtfully, then shook his head. "It doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is who you are. And I can see you're stronger than you think." She tried to shake the feeling, focusing on her walk, her smile, the confidence she had been taught. But as the final moments approached, a sudden disturbance from outside the venue caught her attention. It was brief, a flash of light in the distance, but it was enough to make her heart skip a beat. Her mind raced back to the warning signs she had overheard from the Xenosian spies. Her father's forces were close. They were coming. Suspense moment. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as a message came through her earpiece, a quiet voice speaking in Xenosian. "Your presence on Earth has been detected. You need to return immediately." She froze for a moment, the sound of the crowd and the lights around her fading into the background. Her worst fear was happening. Her people had found her. The invasion was imminent, and it was all because of her. But before she could react, Ethan's voice broke through the chaos in her mind. Lyra, don't listen to them. You don't have to go back. You can stay here. You belong here. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The choice was clear: return to her empire and risk a war with Earth, or defy everything she had ever known and fight for the life she had dreamed of. But in that moment, she realized she wasn't alone. Ethan's belief in her, his kindness, had given her something she had never had before: hope. She turned, meeting Ethan's gaze across the stage. The crowd was still cheering, oblivious to the danger that loomed above them. I'm not going back, Lyra whispered to herself, the decision clear in her mind. I'm not going to let them destroy this world. As the music continued to play and the contestants took their turns, Lyra's path became clear. She would fight for Earth, for the life she had built here, and for the one person who had given her the courage to stand up for what was right. But little did she know, her decision would set off a chain of events that would change everything, not just for her, but for Earth and the future of the universe itself. Lyra's heart raced as the massive shadow of the Xenosian ship loomed above the arena. The Miss Universe stage, once a symbol of hope and unity, now felt like a battlefield. The crowd below gasped, looking up at the sky in awe and fear. The lights of the competition faded into the background as every eye turned toward the alien vessel. Lyra stood frozen in the center of the stage, the weight of the decision she had just made crushing her. She had chosen to defy her father, the Emperor of Xenos, and now her people were here to bring her back. But that wasn't the worst part. She knew what would happen next. Her father would stop at nothing to conquer Earth. A war was about to begin, and it was all because of her. Ethan, standing in the wings of the stage, saw the fear in her eyes. Without thinking, he rushed to her side, his voice full of urgency. Lyra, what's happening? What's that ship? Lyra looked at him, her heart torn. It's my people. They'd come for me. I never thought they'd actually find me. Ethan didn't hesitate. We have to stop them. You can't let them destroy everything. She could see the fear in his eyes, but there was something else too: determination. For a moment, Lyra wasn't sure how to respond. She had never imagined she would be in this position. How could a simple human like Ethan help her stop the invasion of an entire alien empire? But the way he looked at her, the way he believed in her, she knew she wasn't alone anymore. They won't stop, Lyra said, her voice filled with uncertainty. My father won't let me go. He'll never let Earth survive. He's too powerful. Ethan took her hand gently, his grip firm. Then we fight together, whatever it takes. Lyra swallowed, her mind racing. She had no idea how to fight a galactic empire, but Ethan was right. She couldn't just sit back and let her father destroy everything she had come to love. The humans had shown her kindness, and she owed them more than just a pageant crown. She owed them her life. At that moment, the loudspeakers across the arena crackled to life. A cold, authoritative voice echoed through the speakers, sending a chill down Lyra's spine. Lyra of Xenos, you are commanded to return immediately. Your defiance has consequences. Surrender, or we will bring the full force of the Empire down upon Earth. The crowd fell silent, fear spreading like wildfire. Lyra knew her father's words were more than a threat. They were a promise. But she wasn't going to back down. She couldn't. Without thinking, Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward to the edge of the stage, where everyone could see her. The eyes of the world were on her. The beauty queen was now standing in defiance, not as a contestant, but as a protector of Earth. My name is Lyra, she said, her voice loud and steady, and I will not go back to a life of control and destruction. I choose Earth, and I choose humanity. If you want me, come and take me. But know this: you will have to destroy this world before you can take me back. The arena was dead silent. No one moved. Lyra's words echoed in the night air, filled with the weight of her declaration. She was ready to fight for Earth, but she didn't know how. Just then, Ethan moved beside her, pulling out a small device from his pocket. "We're not doing this alone," he said, his voice steady. "I have a plan." Lara looked at him, her heart pounding with both fear and hope. She had no idea what Ethan was about to do, but in that moment, she realized something. This human, the one who had shown her kindness when no one else had, was the reason she was still standing. They could face anything together. Suspense moment. The massive Xenosian ship suddenly began to lower, descending slowly, its dark shape swallowing the light above. Lara felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, and for a moment, she thought her father's forces would land right there in the center of the arena. She couldn't let that happen. Earth had become her home, and she would protect it at all costs. Ethan held the device up, a look of determination on his face. "I've been working on this," he said. "It's a signal jammer. It can block any communication from that ship and stall them long enough for us to take action." Lyra took the device from him, her fingers trembling. "But won't they know we're blocking them?" "They'll know," Ethan said with a grim smile. "But it will buy us time. And that's all we need." The ground beneath them rumbled once more, and Lyra could hear the sound of the ship's engines powering up. They didn't have much time. With a deep breath, Lyra activated the jammer, and the air around them crackled with energy as the signal from the ship was blocked. For a brief moment, everything went quiet. The Xenosian ship hovered in place, unable to communicate with its forces. Lyra could feel the tension in the air. This was their chance. But she knew it was just the beginning. The battle was about to get much more dangerous. Ethan turned to her. "We have to get to the control center. If we can take down their communications, we might be able to stop the invasion altogether." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. She wasn't just a contestant anymore. She wasn't just an alien princess. She was a warrior now, and she was fighting for a planet that had shown her more kindness than her own people ever had. Suspense moment. But just as they were about to make their move, a voice rang out from above. The ship's speaker system crackled to life once more, and this time, it was her father's voice. "Lyra, you cannot run from your destiny. Surrender now, and I will spare this planet. Refuse, and you will bring doom to all who stand with you." Lyra clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the choice before her. Her father's words weren't just empty threats. They were a warning. The fight was far from over. And this time, it wasn't just her future at stake. It was Earth's. The ground beneath Lyra's feet shook with the hum of the Xenosian ship's engines as it remained suspended above them, an ominous reminder of the threat her father's empire posed. The crowd, now aware of the gravity of the situation, had fallen into stunned silence. The beauty pageant had turned into something far darker, something that could change the fate of Earth forever. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground. Ethan's presence beside her was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. His belief in her, his quiet strength, was the only reason she could face the danger ahead. As the alien ship loomed overhead, the weight of the choice she had made pressed heavily on her shoulders. "We don't have much time," Ethan said, his voice low and urgent. "We have to stop them before they can launch the invasion." Lyra looked around, searching for any way out, any plan that could help them. There was no army at her side, no high-tech weapons, just her and Ethan, standing against an entire empire. The thought seemed impossible, but she knew this was the path she had chosen. "We can't face them alone," Lyra said, her voice filled with a mix of fear and determination. "I'll contact the humans who've helped me. We need a plan, and we need it now." Ethan nodded. "I know some of the people in the security team. We'll gather everyone we can. They'll listen to us." With a new sense of urgency, Lyra activated her communicator, sending out a silent distress signal. She wasn't sure if it would reach anyone in time, but it was all she had. As the minutes ticked away, she found herself staring at the ship above, knowing that every second brought them closer to disaster. The massive ship suddenly released a low, guttural sound, a noise that reverberated through the air, making everyone in the arena shiver. It was a warning. Lyra's heart skipped a beat as she realized it wasn't just her who would be affected by the coming conflict. It was the entire world. Suddenly, a human voice came through her communicator, breaking through the tense silence. "This is Commander Richards. We've received your signal. We're on our way. Hold tight, Lyra. Help is coming." Relief flooded Lyra's chest, but it was short-lived. The Tenosian ship began to lower, its massive, metallic form blocking out the stars above. Lyra's father was coming. He had given her a choice, but there was no more room for decisions. The invasion was happening. "They're coming for you, Lyra," the voice from the ship crackled again. "This is your final chance to return to Xenos. Your people are waiting. The future of Earth depends on your obedience." Lyra stood taller, her spine stiffening as she prepared to face her destiny. "I refuse. I won't go back to a life of control and fear. I choose Earth. I choose freedom." The ship's voice seemed to falter for a moment. Then, a more menacing tone took over. "Then you will bring destruction to this planet, Lyra. The consequences will be swift. Prepare yourself." The ship began to emit strange, flashing lights as its engines roared to life once again. Lyra knew time was running out. With every passing second, the ship's weaponry systems would be activated, ready to take Earth by force. The countdown had already begun. Suspense moment. Just as the ship began its descent, an explosion of light erupted in the sky. At first, Lyra thought it was the ship's attack, but it wasn't. The explosion was far off, and it was followed by the sound of distant but growing gunfire. Lyra's communicator buzzed to life again. "This is Commander Richards. We've started the counteroffensive. It's now or never. We need you to disable the ship's weapons before they target Earth. The resistance is ready, but we're not going to be able to hold them off for long." Lyra's heart raced. The countdown was happening right before her eyes. There was no time to waste. "Ethan, we need to get inside that ship." Ethan nodded. "Let's go." Without another word, the two of them rushed toward the edge of the arena, moving quickly to avoid the chaos erupting around them. Earth's military forces were beginning to strike back, but Lyra knew they couldn't do it alone. Her father's forces were too powerful, and their technology was far superior. When they reached the back of the arena, Lyra pulled out her communicator again and sent a signal to the resistance group she had been in contact with. "I'm in position. Get us inside the ship." A few moments later, a small group of soldiers appeared, flanking her and Ethan as they crouched low behind the walls of the arena. They didn't need to ask questions. They just followed her lead. Lyra, her nerves tightly wound, led the way toward the landing bay of the Tenosian ship. She didn't know what awaited them inside, but she was determined to stop the invasion. As they approached the ship's entrance, a sudden blast of energy shot out from the ship's side, narrowly missing them. The air was thick with tension. Lyra had no idea how they were going to breach the ship, but she knew they had to act fast. Suspense moment. Suddenly, a loud voice rang out from within the ship. "You think you can stop us? Your resistance is futile. You cannot win. We are the Xenosian Empire, and we are unstoppable." The voice echoed through the air, sending a chill down Lyra's spine. But instead of fear, she felt something else, a rush of adrenaline. She was standing at the crossroads of two worlds, the world she had come from, and the world she had chosen to protect. "We'll see about that," she muttered under her breath. The cold air inside the Xenosian ship felt like a vice, squeezing Lyra's chest with every step she took. The walls, made of a dark metallic alloy, hummed ominously, as if the ship itself were alive, waiting for her to make a wrong move. Behind her, Ethan and the small group of resistance soldiers moved cautiously, their faces masked with determination and fear. The Xenosian soldiers had appeared out of nowhere, surrounding them in the dark, narrow corridors of the ship. They moved quickly, their alien eyes glowing with cold malice. Lyra's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her mission was clear: find the heart of the ship, disable the weapons systems, and stop her father's invasion. As they advanced deeper into the ship, the walls seemed to close in on them. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional hiss of the ship's energy systems. Every corner they turned felt like it could be their last, but Lyra kept her focus, her eyes never leaving the path ahead. They finally arrived at a large metallic door at the end of a long, dark corridor. This was it, the heart of the ship. Beyond it lay the central command center, where the weapons systems were controlled. If they could breach the door and disable the ship's weapons, they would have a chance to turn the tide of the battle outside. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she approached the door. This was the moment. She glanced back at Ethan, who gave her a nod, silently reassuring her that they could do this. "Ready?" she whispered, though she didn't need to ask. They had no other choice but to be ready. Ethan tapped the small device on his wrist, a signal jammer that would help them disable the ship's security systems. A soft beep signaled that the device was active. Lyra could feel the tension in the air as they waited for the moment to strike. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sound of pounding footsteps. More Xenosian soldiers were coming. It wasn't just one or two. They were storming toward them, ready to protect the heart of the ship at all costs. "We don't have much time," Ethan muttered. "We need to move now." Lyra nodded, her hand gripping the device tightly. In one swift motion, she stepped forward and slammed her hand onto the control panel beside the door. It hummed, and the door slowly slid open with a loud hiss. But just as it did, a blinding flash of light erupted in the corridor, and the air became thick with the sound of energy blasts. Xenosian soldiers poured into the room from all sides, their weapons charging, their eyes locked on Lyra. Suspense moment. Lyra's heart raced as the soldiers raised their weapons, the deadly energy beams just waiting to be unleashed. But before they could fire, Ethan lunged forward, tackling one of the soldiers to the ground. The rest of the resistance soldiers followed, a barrage of gunfire breaking out as they engaged the enemy. The room was filled with flashes of light and the sounds of struggle, but through it all, Lyra stood her ground. Her thoughts raced as she searched for a way to disable the weapons system. In the chaos, she noticed a small console on the far wall, its blinking lights a sign of the ship's central control. That was the heart of the ship, the place where she could end this war. Lyra pushed through the chaos, her legs moving almost on their own. The alien soldiers were relentless, but she couldn't afford to stop. She could hear the gunfire behind her, the screams of resistance soldiers battling to hold their ground, but she couldn't look back. The mission was everything. Finally, she reached the console. Her hands flew over the buttons, trying to decipher the alien technology. She could feel the heat of the blaster shots that grazed the walls around her, but she focused, ignoring everything else. The countdown to Earth's destruction was still ticking, and she had to stop it. Suspense moment. Suddenly, the voice of her father rang out from a loudspeaker somewhere above. "Lyra, you will fail. You cannot stop what has already been set in motion. The invasion is inevitable." The words sent a chill down her spine, but she pushed them out of her mind. The countdown wasn't inevitable. She wouldn't let it be. With a sharp press of a button, a loud alarm blared throughout the ship. The lights above flickered. Lyra's heart skipped a beat as she realized what had happened. She had triggered the ship's lockdown sequence. The weapons systems were now disabled, but it wouldn't last long. She had only moments before the Xenosian Empire activated a secondary protocol to restart the systems. "We need to get out now," Lyra shouted, turning toward Ethan. But just as she did, the door to the control room slammed shut, trapping them inside. The atmosphere inside the Xenosian ship was thick with tension, the low hum of alien technology almost drowning out the sound of Lyra's heartbeat. Her eyes locked with her father's, and the room felt smaller, colder. He stood before her, Emperor Kale, a symbol of everything she had once been, powerful, cold, and ruthless. But now, that power felt empty. Lyra had chosen a different path. She had chosen Earth. You think you've won, don't you, Lyra? The Emperor sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. You're nothing but a child playing at rebellion. You can't stop what's already in motion. This war, this invasion, it's inevitable. Lyra's jaw tightened, her eyes steady. No, I won't let you take Earth. You had your chance. You lost. The Emperor's eyes flashed with anger, and he raised his hand. In an instant, a surge of energy shot toward Lyra, crackling through the air with devastating force. Ethan reacted quickly, pulling Lyra aside just in time. The blast hit the wall behind them, causing the entire ship to tremble, but they were still standing. We have to stop him now, Lyra gasped, struggling to steady her breath. Ethan nodded. He turned to the control panel nearby. I'm almost there. Just hold him off for a few more seconds. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she faced her father. This was it, the moment she'd feared. The last battle. The Emperor let out a cruel laugh, his eyes glowing with dark power. You think you can stop me, Lyra? You're nothing without me. You can't fight your destiny. You will always be a part of the Xenosian Empire. With a furious shout, Lyra sprinted forward, narrowly dodging another blast of energy from her father. She wasn't going to back down. She had made her choice, and Earth was her home now. I'm not a tool for you to control. Lyra shouted as she launched herself at her father, using her alien agility to land a swift kick to his side. The Emperor staggered but quickly regained his stance, his eyes narrowing. He raised his hand once more, the air crackling with deadly energy. But before he could unleash another attack, Ethan shouted, Now, Lyra. Lyra didn't hesitate. She dove towards the control panel, her hands moving rapidly across the alien keys. The ship's systems blinked as the countdown to the invasion was interrupted. A loud alarm filled the room, signaling that the weapons systems had been disabled. You're too late, Lyra's father hissed, his fists clenched in anger. This is just a delay. You can't win. Lyra, breathless and determined, turned to him. I've already won. With a final press of the button, the systems powered down, the countdown halted. The massive alien ship that had once promised destruction to Earth now stood silent, vulnerable. But the Emperor wasn't finished. With a roar, he launched himself at Lyra, his dark energy reaching out to seize her. Just as he was about to strike, Ethan pushed her aside, taking the full brunt of the Emperor's power. Lyra screamed as Ethan crumpled to the ground, his body convulsing from the shock of the energy blast. No, Lyra cried, rushing to his side. Ethan. He coughed, his face pale, but he was still alive. I'm okay, he whispered weakly. You need to finish this. The Emperor stood there, seething, his dark eyes blazing. You think you've won, but you haven't seen the last of me, Lyra. I will return. And when I do, I will destroy everything you love. Lyra stood, her body shaking with adrenaline, but her resolve was unshaken. You're wrong. I've already taken everything from you. Earth is safe, and I'll make sure it stays that way. The Emperor's eyes narrowed one last time. With a final, guttural growl, he turned and vanished into the shadows of the ship, leaving Lyra and Ethan behind. As the ship began to crumble around them, Lyra helped Ethan to his feet, her heart still racing from the battle they had just fought. The countdown had ended, the invasion stopped. They had won. Suspense moment. The ship groaned as it began to destabilize, its systems failing one by one. We need to get out of here, Lyra said, pulling Ethan toward the escape hatch. The sound of the Emperor's retreating footsteps echoed in the distance. Lyra knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. But today, they had won. Today, she had stopped the war. As they made their way out, the last blast of the ship's energy systems erupted into the sky, lighting up the night. Earth was safe. For now. But Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that her fight had just begun.